Before we get started on the podcast today, I just want to let you know about a free class I am teaching tomorrow, January 29th, if you are listening to this the day that this podcast comes out. That's why I wanted to get this right up front on the podcast episode to let you know I'm teaching a free class called Reclaim Your Heritage. It's a free class where I'm going to show you how you can trace your family tree, understand your lineage, and reclaim the strength and wisdom of your ancestors. So if you want to come to this free class, there is a recording if you can't come live. It's tomorrow, Thursday, January 29th at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, which is noon Eastern Time. You can go to knowyourancestors.co/reclaim. The link will be in the show notes. Hello and welcome to the podcast today. I am here with Jessica and I am so excited to talk to her and for you to hear her story and what she's been able to uncover about her second great grandmother, and kind of her journey through doing research and what she's been able to find and learn about her family. But before we dive into that, Jessica, can you just give a little introduction to yourself, where you live, what you do, or whatever
Yes.
you want
Hi.
to share?
Yeah. First, thank you for having me. When I got your email, I was like, yes, I would love to. Sharing her story, sharing my story has been really important to me. So thank you. But about me. So I am 37. I live in Arizona with my family. I have two sons. They are 6 and 4, so we stay very busy. I am a full-time nurse, so genealogy is not my job. It is something I just have a deep passion for, and the past year has brought me to some, incredible places. I'm married. Um,
Can't
it's
forget the
funny.
husband.
Yeah, so when people ask you about yourself, you're like, "Oh, I don't know. Who am I?"
Yeah, yeah.
I'm married. I met my husband junior year of college, so we've been together for 17 years now, and that's the down and dirty of it.
Awesome. So you're quite busy. You're 6 and 4-year-old. Like I know how busy those little kids can be
And
with
boys,
working on top of that. Boys, yes.
yes,
I have four
yeah,
boys, so I
the energy in our house is intense.
yes. Okay, so I'm curious, how did you get started with genealogy? Did you just decide one day you wanted to learn about it, or like what drove you to start?
This is such a great question because it is something that I have always been interested in. Um, when I share this part, how I always describe it is I've always had this deep curiosity for my ancestors since I don't know, since I can remember, really, since I've had this memory of all of this. With that deep curiosity, I've also had this sense of sorts that there would be something that I would find out. And I know that sounds odd, but I sort of describe it as this like feeling or knowing or some sort of
Mhm.
sensation. I don't know, like just behind my peripheral vision, or maybe somewhere tucked back in my brain that I couldn't quite hear. But it was always there, like, this is something that you need to look into because you're gonna find out something. I had no idea what that would be. I think I was hoping for something maybe a little bit more fun, like a Princess Diaries situation.
That would be cool.
But, here we are. So I've just always had this sense, and I joined ancestry.com. It would be 12 years ago now. So that's when I actually started trying to do something about it. I'm trying to find something about it. And I would find little nuggets here and there. I would put down the research for months at a time, go back to it 6 months, maybe a year later, try to find things. And I would not really find much until March of this year. Or last year, March of last year. That's right. We're 2026 now. Yeah.
Yeah, almost a whole year ago. Cool. So were you close with your family, like your grandparents? Were you close with them, or how was that
Yeah.
relationship?
Yes. So my and my dad divorced when I was baby. Like a year old or something like that. And because of that, lived with my grandparents in Southern California for a short period of time. I also had an aunt and uncle who lived near us who also helped take care of me while so yes, and my other grandparents, I would go see frequently in Wisconsin. So, but I did live with my maternal grandparents while I was a baby, and then again later in childhood when we were moving and building a house. Yeah, very very present in my life, although I don't think they were the ones who like talked about that stuff all the time. Digging into my ancestry didn't really come from.
They weren't sharing information.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, let's dive into your first discoveries. So in March of last year, you said you kind of started actually finding things. So what were you first? What was like your first discoveries and what pushed you to find more?
Yeah, so I hop on Ancestry, and as I did, every couple of months. And one of the things that I really like about Ancestry and the platform is the hints function, that little leaf function. And I clicked on the alert that I had a new hint for my great great grandmother, Susan. This is on my mother's father's side of our family. And it said, you have a new hint for Susan. I click on it and it brings me to the 1980s federal census records. Click open that document and scroll down to find her name. There she is. And to one of the columns to the right of her name, it says inmate. And in that moment, like my whole body just, like, excuse me, what? And excuse me, I scroll up to the top of the document, the header of the federal census records, and it says Mayview State Hospital. And in that moment, I had a pit in my stomach. I just something felt not off, but just
Yeah.
like dig into
Emotional.
this
Yeah.
girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And emotional for sure. Things felt really intense. So I immediately go over to Google and I type in Mayview State Hospital. And right there, the like Google, I think it brought up like Wikipedia right away or something. And it said that it was a state mental hospital in Pennsylvania. And seeing that it was a mental hospital, I felt very overwhelmed, very emotional because we have a rather intense mental health history in my family on that side of the family. So it almost felt familiar in a odd sort of way. Then the very next thing that I did was click over to Google Images, and the red brick facade of this building pops up. And this is one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me in my life, for sure, although this year has been full of a few more. But I see the front brick facade of this building, and my whole body, like with my whole body, it tells me, you know this place, you've seen it before. And that's impossible because I have never been to Pennsylvania. I've never been to Pennsylvania. My mother's never been to Pennsylvania. My grandfather moved out of the Pittsburgh area when he joined the Marines in the 60s. So I had never been there, and after a quick Google search, Mayview State Hospital was demolished in 2012, between 2010 and 2012. So it's not even there anymore. And I just started freaking out. I started freaking out and not understanding what I was like feeling or seeing, or like, what do you mean you recognize this building that you've never been to before? That's really weird, Jessica. Like that's not normal. So I started texting my husband, oh my God, my great great grandmother Susan was in this facility and I'm looking at this picture and, why does my body tell me that I recognize it? So, um, that is how I came across this information. And as I dig into it more and more, I found her on the 1940s federal census records being in Mayview State Hospital. And then shortly after that, I think it must have been just a couple of days or so, I also came across her death certificate. And her death certificate states that she died in Mayview State Hospital. So my initial discoveries, I have her there from 1940 to 1969. which is an incredible amount of time to
Okay.
be in a facility.
Yeah. I'm curious, what have you like that feeling that you felt that you've seen that hospital before? Have you come up with an explanation for that? Like, why do you think you had that reaction?
I ask myself that all the time. A few days after that happened, my husband and I sat down and I was like, we got to talk about this more because, like, I'm freaking out. And my husband noticed that I was like trying to talk myself out of this experience that I had.
Mhm.
And he's been unbelievable this whole entire time, just so kind and supportive. But he reminded me, Jessica, to hold on to what actually happened in that moment. Like if that was your experience, if that's what you felt, if that's what you knew, you need to go back to that and stop talking yourself out of it. Cause I was trying to like logically yeah, talk myself out of
Explain.
it. Logically, yeah, and explain like how this
Right.
could happen. And so I think it may have been a sense of intuition. Like my intuition telling me that I was on the right track, maybe, and that I needed to follow it. I've been sharing this journey, every step of it on my social media platforms. And, something I get commented on all the time is, maybe you're Susan reincarnated. And I don't know. I don't, you know, it's a rather, it's a concept that's hard for me to wrap my head around,
Yeah.
although I am open to all things. I don't know how
Mhm.
things work. But
Mhm.
for me, I just come back to that. I think it was just my intuition telling me that this was where I was meant to be.
Yeah. Well, I think that that is a part of your history too, right?
Mhm.
That passed down the lines, that pain, that trauma, that whatever she experienced there is in you too. At least that's what I think. That's what I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I've also, generational trauma.
Mhm.
I've been reading up on that. It Didn't Start With You, that book. And
Mhm.
I mean, absolutely. And one of the reasons why I had such an intense emotional reaction to finding out that she was in a state mental hospital was because of my family history with mental
Mhm.
illness.
Yeah.
And it is just generation after generation. And it's been a theme in my own personal life since I can remember. So there's also that component.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know after that, then you started looking for records from the actual hospital, right? What was that process? And I know then you found some other discoveries with like her son and her husband and all of that. Maybe just dive into that however you want to do that.
Okay. It's so much information. I'm like,
Yeah.
"How much time does she have?" Okay. So, yes, I find out Susan's in Mayview State Hospital. Okay, well, Google is such an amazing tool.
Mhm.
I turn into a little detective, and I find out that in the state of Pennsylvania, the old state hospitals, their records are held at the Pennsylvania State Archives. Excuse me. And I go on to request her records from Mayview State Hospital. You got to pay $20 or something. And then in 4 to 6 weeks, an archivist will email you back. And so some weeks later, I got her records from the state archives. And this was a little disappointing because all the records that I received back were an admission log from 1932, an admission log from the year 1938, and a discharge log from 1969. Now, we're literally talking about logs. It's just Susan's name written along a list of other people. And unfortunately, on the admission logs for both years, 1932 and 1938, there is no admission reason listed on these documents. It just gives her name, date, female, age. One little hint that was on the 1938 records was that it says readmitted via court order, which was a little nugget of information. And then the discharge log from 1969 is when she passed away. And she passed away on her death certificate from pulmonary edema related to cardiovascular disease. So there's no, oh, and sorry, and then secondary listed is a fractured hip. So there is no mention of a valid reason that someone would be in a state mental hospital from, 1932 to 1969. And I also don't have the discharge log from when she left from 1932. I know that she is with her family in 1936, so she leaves between 1932 and 1926 or 36. But that's all the records told me, which was a huge bummer. But at least I did get the dates and understanding more that, instead of her being there for 29 years, she had really been there for, well over 30 years total. So I went on, I have since made friends with this gentleman at the Pennsylvania State Archives because I email him so much, and he is so kind, and he always answers my questions. But then I go on to ask him, like, hey, this says it's court ordered. How do I go about and find any record of this court order? And, he pointed me to the Allegheny County. And I think he pointed me in the direction of like the Wills and Orphans Court or possibly the Civil Court.
Okay.
And this is when I went around and around for weeks, Megan. Weeks. I went
Uh,
around with the court system for weeks, which was so frustrating. Like I said before, I'm a nurse. I'm not a lawyer. I am not a genealogist. Like I don't know anything. So I start putting in records. I'm calling, I'm leaving voicemails. I'm not getting phone calls back. I'm not getting emails back. And then one day on a Friday, I get super lucky and this woman answers her phone instead of it going to voicemail. And I said, hi, oh my God, I've been trying to get hold.
person.
Oh my God, I'm so happy to talk to a person. And I tell her the situation. I'm trying to find, these court order mental health records from my great-great-grandmother from the year 1939. She goes, "Hold on one second. I'm gonna go talk to my supervisor. He's here today."
Mm.
Great, sweet. She comes back and she says, "Those records are sealed." And that was it. Like, "Those records are sealed." And I said, "From 1938?" "Yes." And, you're just in shock. And I feel like this happens in a lot of when you have conversations that don't go the way you think. You know how, like, later you think about
Yeah.
all the things you would have said?
Yeah.
So I was just in shock and I was like, Okay, thank you." Hung up with her and I wanted to cry because, like, what do you
Yeah.
mean they're sealed
But
from
can't you
1938?
unseal them?
What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
So I was, sad and a little put off there for a day or two. And then I sort of just pulled myself up by the bootstraps and I was like, no, I'm going to figure this out because what do you mean they're still sealed from 1938? And I went on to do some research of the Pennsylvania state law. And with the help of Chat GPT, I invoked the help of Chat GPT. I wrote a letter to petition to unseal the records because I am a direct descendant. It is in regards to mental health history, and I'm doing genealogy research, right? And so then after this, again, I'm going in circles with the court. I submit it to the Wills and Orphans Court, which is the woman I talked to on the phone. That was her division.
Mhm.
They denied me multiple times because my cover letter was missing,
Okay.
whatever. I mean, like the logistical blah, blah, blah. I swear it was like 4 times. So you, like, submit the paperwork, you wait a couple days for them to look at it, and they're like, "Denied. Please put whatever number on your cover letter." I'm like, there's no instructions for this lady, I'm trying my best here.
Uh,
And finally, after weeks of doing that, she emails me back and she goes, "After further review, these records don't exist."
what?
Well, lost my mind.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Okay, so then super upset and sad and, I felt that I would never find the answers. Anyway, God, we're still on this one part of the story. Holy moly.
Very good.
Okay. Okay. And then in this time period of all of this back and forth with the courts, I am back researching John. John Sr. is Susan's husband,
Mhm.
also AKA my great great grandfather.
Okay.
I have had a wall up about John Sr. since the second I started researching this side of the family. I don't know what it is. I just have bad feelings. So
Mhm.
I have always referred to him as John Sr. or Susan's husband. But yes, he is my great great grandfather.
Mhm.
People on my social media platforms call me out on that all the time. They're like, "Isn't he your great great grandfather?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I guess so. But anyway, I came across on ancestry.com a document that has him in Allegheny Workhouse Prison for abusing his family. And he served a whopping 30 days. 30 days for abusing his family. Um, and so eye-opening in the most horrible way, like validating of why I had this
Mhm.
wall up about him this whole entire time, 'cause he wasn't a good guy, and I don't know from the details of this, because once again, it was a log. It was just a prison log with his name written on it with, a little bit of detail, but I don't really know the details of that. It just says
Right.
abusing family.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Also, along the way of all of my research, I found out that Susan and John had 9 children total. And unfortunately, 4 of them can't get my words right here. 4 of them passed away in as babies from the ages 4 months to a year and 7 months.
So all these children were born before, like,
Yes, before she
1932.
went.
Yeah.
Yes, they were born in 1919 all the way to 1922, I believe, is the last one
Oh, okay.
who passed away, and they were back to back. All 4 were back to back to back, which, as a mother myself, it is absolutely devastating to think about. This side of the family was poor. Was very poor. And I did know this prior to doing this research. My parents told me, I never heard it from my own grandfather, but my parents told me that my grandfather, I call him Poppy, grew up very poor in Pittsburgh and that his family were workers in the steel mill. So I knew this, but as I researched this family more, it became just a very big part of this story and how they lived and what they experienced and how difficult their life was. And then, of course, we have the Great Depression that comes along here. So the 4 babies, 2 of them died from a respiratory illness right at the time around the Spanish flu is happening. And then the other 2 pass away from a gastroenteritis. And when I looked into this more for the time period, it turns out that it is related to something called summer diarrhea. And during this time, families who could not afford refrigeration during the summer months, their
Mm,
food would become warmer and bacteria
right.
grows in warmer environments. And especially if we are talking about milk for babies, if Susan needed to get milk for her babies, the milk would spoil or other food would spoil. And they would not be aware. And unfortunately, the kids would get really, really sick and ultimately die from the dehydration from the diarrhea.
That's awful.
Yeah, it's a truly awful thing, and it's something this whole time along this whole entire story, I'm like, "Oh my god," like, I never thought I would just be so thankful for refrigeration. And I mean that in
Mhm.
like a like, oh my god, what they endured
Yeah.
and things we know now and what we know now and what we have now is, we're so very lucky. So the 4 babies also sort of have a big role in this story, and they were living at one point after my great-great-grandmother Susan goes to the state mental hospital. My family was living in a shanty on the Allegheny River, so very poor, and I found out that the shanty was built by some of John's sons, so that was their living conditions. Okay. Where am I at in this
Okay.
story?
No, that's good. I love how okay, a lot of people as genealogists, like, we're just researching the facts, right? Like, where were they born? When did they die? How many kids they had? But I love how when you have kind of how do you say, dove in? Is that a best? How you
Yeah.
dived into your ancestry. It's always been like, what was their life like? Like,
Oh,
what
yeah.
you know, why was she there? Let's see if I can figure that out. You know, where did they live? What would that have been like? Oh, they died of this. What actually was that? You know, and I think a lot of genealogists even forget that side of genealogy, but
Yeah.
that's what makes it so much more personal and feel like, we know who these people are. Like, we know what their experiences might have been like more than just this is when they died, this is where they lived, but like what actually happened, right? So I think that's a powerful way to do this work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm deeply, deeply curious, and it's something I will never know, unfortunately, about the family dynamics, the personality, the day to day, what things looked like for them.
Mhm.
I just remembered something that I missed from the beginning of the story, which is kind of important. When I found out this information about Susan, my grandparents came to visit. They live in Southern California. I live in Arizona. And they came to visit about a month, maybe 6 weeks after I found out this information. And we were in our living room, and I had my computer open, and I brought up what I found out about Grandma Susan. And I asked my grandfather, "Does any of this sound familiar? Do you know anything about Grandma Susan?" And he said, "No, I knew she was in some sort of facility, but I was told that she died." And he never met her. I'm sorry, he said, "I never met her. I knew she was in a facility, but I was
Right.
told she died."
Wow.
And I said, "Okay, well, she didn't die until 1969." He whipped his head. He was looking away from me while I was talking to him. He whipped his head around and looked at me in genuine shock. And said something like, "Is that right?" Or, "What?" Something like that. And I said, "Yeah, she didn't die until 1969." And he turned back around, and he said, "Well, we didn't talk about that back then." And, 1969 is after my own mother was born.
Right.
So, my grandfather was a young adult at this time. And, you asked earlier in the conversation, was I close with my family? Was I close with my grandparents? Absolutely. And to think that my own grandfather didn't know anything about his own grandmother, she was kept away from him, never met him. Grandma Susan could have even been given the opportunity to meet her great granddaughter, my mother, and she wasn't given that opportunity. And bringing this information to my family and being met with such a lack of knowledge, but also, to be honest with you, they do not want to talk about it. That secrecy is still there. And I'll be honest with you, I think that's when I dug my heels in. I think, I mean, as a mother myself, to be kept away from my children. Susan and John's youngest child, their ninth child, was born in 1928. She was first admitted in 1932, and then admitted again in 1938, and then never left again. And to miss out on all of that, to miss out on your grandchildren, and they were living right there. Mayview State Hospital is not that far away from Pittsburgh in the city where they were living, you know? There was
So
opportunity.
yeah. So I know that as you've shared videos and things, a lot of your followers have commented saying my great grandma was also in a
Yes.
facility and all of
Yes.
these. Do you
Yep.
feel like women at that time, like there was kind of a husbands could silence, they could send them off, or do you feel like that with you with Susan, or what? How do you
Hmm.
feel? Like was she misunderstood, misdiagnosed, or what do you think
Yeah.
might have gone
So
on?
first, I just want to go back to what you first said about like husband silencing. Another part of this is as a nurse and someone who's deeply passionate about history, I had a knowledge base before finding out this information of what mental health treatments used to look like, the social stigmas, the fact that literally a husband could be like, well, I'm over this. I would like one younger, please, and could essentially ask a judge to sign a piece of paper and get their wives put away. Or let's say, their wife was struggling with postpartum depression, or I mean, I don't know, maybe she was too difficult or she had different religious views. They could be put away. And knowing that knowledge and then finding this out about my own great great grandmother and then realizing that it's a family secret and she's been kept a secret, I dug my heels in because nobody deserves that to be kept away from their family. So I had a very strong sense from the beginning that there's some sort of injustice here. Like, why was she put there in the first place? And then next, like, why over 30 years? Why did she have to stay there? And to that question, I still do not have an answer. I think it's probably a lot of different reasons, a combination of everything. But I do feel that there's some sort of injustice there, and Susan deserved better. You mentioned there of people commenting on my videos that they also had, their grandmother, great grandmother being put in an institution. And that is something that really cracked me open is that this is not just my story. It is a story of thousands, hundreds of thousands of women faced this injustice. And I think it is so important to share. And I found so much motivation in sharing this history and these other women's stories because when you look at our history, our timeline of humans, this history happened yesterday. It was not that
Less than
long
100 years.
ago. Yeah, like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to remember and share.
Yeah. My great grandma was actually also in a mental institution. She was like senile, I'm pretty sure, like dementia,
Sweet.
but
Yeah.
it was hard. Like she sent some letters home to her husband and it's like, I don't know why I'm here in this jail. What have I done wrong? I just want
That
to see
is
you and see Dio, my grandfather. Yeah, it's sad. Like
heartbreak.
there's just so little understanding of mental health, of, yeah, but,
There was just a real lack of compassion and empathy. And listen, I
mhm,
mean, we've learned so much about the brain and neurology and
mhm.
mental health and psychology and all of these things since then. So thank goodness for that. And they were dealing with the knowledge that they had at the time. But after reading story after story, there's a huge lack of empathy and compassion here. And this sense, societal norms had such a huge influence over all of this, right? Of it's shameful. And it seems like so much of the societal norms and the shame drove what happened. I have since been doing, a lot more research, and I came across the 1880 federal census for, I'm so sorry, I don't have it up in front of me, but they did it says delinquents. And have you come across the census record?
Like
Does
the
that sound familiar? It's
I
from the year
mhm,
1880. It was in
okay.
addition to the 1880 federal
Mhm,
census record, like the normal one. They did an additional one, and it's basically everyone who was in a prison, a state mental hospital, some sort of like facility.
mhm.
They took an additional census record. And if you haven't looked into this, you should look at it because it is absolutely I mean, so eye-opening. So they list on this census record the diagnoses and
Oh,
reasons,
really?
yes, that these patients
I
were
don't know.
there.
I haven't heard of that.
Yes, you gotta go look. I mean, it'll make you
Mm,
cry, honestly.
yeah.
And where I'm looking at diagnoses, so mania is a huge
Mhm.
one that they just write over and over and over and over
Yeah.
again, which is obviously an umbrella term for
Mhm.
so many things.
Right.
Um, but you also on there will see dementia a lot.
Oh,
But
really?
dementia is also used as an umbrella term because you look at the ages of this patient there for dementia, they're 21 years old.
Mm.
So then you got to do the historical research. Dementia at the time was a umbrella term. It basically meant if you had any change in emotional, mental, physical being, what am I trying to say? Any emotional, mental,
Yeah.
physical changes at all,
Yeah.
they would lump you in this dementia category, you know. So it is another diagnosis on there. Nymphomania. Yeah. Yes, indeed. So I mean, it's horrifying, really.
Mhm.
And then there's also a column there where they annotate whether this patient requires restraints.
Really? Wow.
And they are using restraints. They have multiple types of restraints, right?
Hmm.
They got wristlets,
Wow.
they call it muffled straps. And we're talking about the year 1880 again, where there are, you know, ethics and medicine and standards do not exist
Yeah.
like we have now, right? So it's a fascinating document. If you haven't looked, you would need to. Really, really, really sad. And I'm hoping to do more research on those census records and hopefully share more stories from them.
So why do you think there is I feel like a lot of people, those, like, painful parts of their family history, it's something they wanna understand. Why do you think, like, maybe for you or for other people, why do you think that is such a drive to learn about that?
That is such a good question because conversely, there are people who do not want to know, right? In
That's
fact,
true.
they
That's
go
true.
out of their way to
To
not
hide it.
listen.
Mm,
Yeah, to hide it and not listen. I think that I have personally seen and felt the damage that it does.
the hiding.
The hiding,
Yeah.
the secrecy, the let's just sweep it under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist because, hey, guess what? That does not fix the problem. We cannot ignore, you know, we just don't cover our eyes and things go away. We have to deal with them. And that is something that I have personally experienced in my life. As I mentioned earlier, mental health struggle has been a theme in my life with immediate family members around me. I've had my own mental health struggles as a young adult and after I became a mother, and it's so damaging to keep them a secret. When we keep things a secret, that tells other people that it is shameful and that we carry some sort of guilt around it. And that keeps us in some sort of prison in our own mental, emotional well being. And for me and my family, it's done no good.
Yeah. So finding her story and finding I know, like, we didn't get into it, but her son was also there, right?
Yes, yes.
We don't have to but, like, so there obviously was some mental health stuff in that family. Has that discovery helped, um, maybe give some understanding to your own experience and compassion to yourself? Like, has that I don't know how to explain it exactly, but, like, I guess, like the book, it didn't start with you, right?
Yeah.
That pain has
So,
been passed.
yeah, I have seen immediate family members of mine struggle with mental health my whole entire life. So, I when it comes to my own struggles, I've just had this understanding that it's in the family. So I've had that understanding for a long time, but finding Susan's story and then her son John's and then some other family members along the way, it just makes the picture so large. And just like what you said with the book, like it didn't start with me. This is a very large story and it's because of that, I think it's given me a lot of motivation, I think, to like take back the story. Like, let's take it back. Let's understand it. Let's share it. I feel so passionate about talking about these things because I'm personally like I'm so tired of the shame in my family. And it is still to this day when I try to ask questions, I am met with so much resistance and defensiveness. And I have got to stop that. I have two sons of my own now. And I I need there to be conversations happening about all of
Mhm.
this so that way my sons don't feel that shame and they understand that we all have emotional and mental issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And it's really how we move forward with them that matters. It's not because we're all going to struggle at some point, right? It's really how we move forward with it. So,
So if someone listening has an ancestor that they feel a pull to, they feel, that desire to get to know, but maybe they're feeling a bit afraid or overwhelmed or unsure what to do, what would you say to them?
oh, this is such a great question. Follow your intuition is my answer. Um, I think that my gut, my intuition, whatever you want to call it, my ancestral pull, it has gotten me such a long way. At the same time, I know that it's very difficult to listen to yourself. That's something that I really focused on in 2025 was sharpening my sense of intuition. We're going to get woo woo here just for like a second.
I'm all for woo woo.
But relearning how to listen to myself, those little tiny messages that I'm getting, what does that sound like? What does that feel like? And I started an intuition journal in 2025, and it was amazing for me to finally understand what was anxiety versus intuition, or maybe something that like I'm trying to tell myself, or maybe my ancestors are trying to tell me. I'm not really sure, but I'm going to go along with it. And how does that feel versus anxiety? And it was really amazing. And I feel like I have a better sense of that. And along this journey of trying to figure out what happened with Susan, I just can't tell you how many times I've been like, wait, I need to focus over here for a second and listening to that and going in that direction and see what comes from it. And the more you do it, the easier and you begin to like recognize that part of yourself. So follow your intuition and you're gonna need to take breaks. It can be mentally and emotionally exhausting. And that's something that I have had to do, every month, every couple of weeks or so, I have to put things down because, I'm learning what happened in the past, which is really heavy for my family and what happened. And, in the present, I still have my own family that I need to be present for. So I have to put it down, but that doesn't mean I'm putting it down forever. It's just to find my motivation, I guess, and just take care of my own mental health.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Our last question here. What does honoring Susan look like for you moving forward?
So I do not know at this point if I am ever going to find out exactly what happened. Over the past 9 months or so, sharing her story has brought me so much purpose. The amount of people that know Grandma Susan now is incredible and very intense. And it makes me very emotional to think about a woman who was put away for so long. Her own grandchildren really didn't even know her name, now is known by so many. So that brings me so much joy for her. Moving forward, though, since I potentially will not find out the ending, quote unquote, the ending to the story, is to share and amplify other voices of women like Susan.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on and sharing her story and your story and all of that. For
Thank
those
you.
that aren't following you, how can people follow you? I know you're on TikTok and Instagram and
Yes. So, oh my gosh, what is my handle? Like, okay, so you can find me.
I'll
You can
link to
find me.
that in the
Okay, perfect, great.
I'll link to the
My
show notes.
handle. Perfect. My handle on both Instagram and TikTok is it's underscore Jessica underscore Ray. But on TikTok, it has one extra underscore. But if you
Okay.
search, it's
I'll put
Jessica
the
Rae.
links. Yeah. I'll
I'm
put
sure
the
you'll
links in
find
the
me.
show notes and you can find.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jessica has lots of videos on there, and you'll get hooked and wanna watch them all and learn all about
Man,
the discoveries she's found.
it is. You gotta buckle up and strap in for some time to get through it all.
Yeah. Alright, well, thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks so much for being here and for listening to this podcast today. I hope that it has inspired you to take a deeper look at your own family tree and learn more about your own ancestors. I am teaching a free class tomorrow called Reclaim Your Heritage, where I will teach you my signature framework of how I research and uncover the deeper parts of your lineage to help you really understand who your ancestors were and feel connected to them. So if you'd like to come to that free class, a recording will be available to all who register. You can go to knowyourancestors.co/reclaim and you can sign up for that free class again tomorrow, January 29th at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.